skimming is when you look very selectively for the main and general ideas, and you just want a general impression of the content. So you're not reading to know in depth what the article or the book is saying. You're just looking for the main or general ideas. And normally you're doing this to decide whether this is material you want to read in depth. And there are 3 tactics you can use for skimming. For academic articles, you start with the title. If this title interests you, then you can say, okay, I'm keeping it. But maybe you say, okay, this is interesting, but let me look whether this is something I really want to do. Then you can read the abstract. The abstract usually gives you what I've highlighted there. The abstract usually gives you sort of like a global picture of what the paper is about. So that's how you skim. You skim using the title. You can use the abstract. You can also look for subheadings. I don't know whether this article has, they do. You can use subheadings, say white man's country crisis. The next one is on commodity. Yeah, and I don't know whether the next one is a history of the Kenya colony in the 1950s. Maybe you're not really interested in going that far back. So that's what you look at. You look at the title, you look at the abstract, the headings. If it's a book, you go to the table of contents and you look at the table of contents. So what usually happens when you get a book, maybe you put in the results and you get a book that you like. The first thing you do is that you go to the table of contents. And like in this case, the table of contents is up there for you. The good thing about this particular ebook thing is that it tells you how many times what you're looking for is in the article. I mean, in the book. So when you come to, let me just clear this. When you come to the table of contents, and all this I will show you after you get your whatever, your password and your username. You go to the table of contents and you can see there's no mention of a playwright. You're just seeing names, titles and names of whoever wrote. And of course, this is the part that I am looking for. But what you can also do, if you're doing an ebook, you can just search for the name and see how many times it comes up. And this book says that his name comes up 6 times. You see this arrow here? You now can see whether you can go to the specific pages and see if that is what you want. If it is a hard copy book, and this is what I'm saying because you will go to the library, I hope. What you do is you go to the index, if the book has an index. So normally books have indices, that's the plural. If you go to the index, you just go to the back of the book, check if his name comes up. And usually the index is classified according to alphabetical basis. So in this case, you can see there's an index for titles of books, there's an index for institutions like this Théâtre Africain, and then these are titles of books, the ones that are in italics. And then you can now also have, let me just use this. You can now also look for the name of the person if that's what you want. So remember that when you go to the library, you use the index to find out if what you're looking for is mentioned in the book. So that's one way to look for the book that you need. You look for the index. Then you also look for keywords, and keywords are usually mentioned in the index, or there are some articles that say keywords in this article, and then they give a list of keywords. You look at that. If you see, oh, this is something I want to read, you put it somewhere where you'll remember to take it. And then the other thing you look for is graphics. You can look for tables, graphs, illustrations. If that tells you that this is something that you want to read, then now you keep it aside for reading later. Let me just also say that for you to be able to use your reading time well, separate your days. Separate the days you use for going to the library to look for books, and then separate from the days when you go to the library to read. Don't combine the two, so that you use one day for just skimming, scanning, checking which books are worth reading, and then the next time when you come now, you just sit down and read. Okay, that is skimming. Skimming is just looking for the key words, key headings, chapters, titles, subheadings, graphics. If that doesn't interest you, you move on. Okay, scanning is the second one. Scanning is the second way to read. When you're scanning, you're searching for particular information while checking for its relevance. So now this time you have to do slightly more reading than when you're skimming. So what are the ways to scan? Let me just go back to the article which I showed you. There are many ways to scan. One is to read the first two paragraphs, the introduction, because the introduction of every article normally tells you what the thesis of the article is. What's the main idea that the author wants to argue about, and you can see here. Here, one does not need to look long or hard to detect the overlap between the predominant contemporary image of Kenya's Europeans and the now conventional historical consensus. So what he's saying is that it's very easy to detect that there's a similarity between what colonial Europeans said and what current Europeans said. Let me see if I have another article so that you can see. This one was about attitudes of British. Anyway, I've been reading a lot of Kenyan history, so that's why I have a lot of historical material. This one was a very interesting article, and I'm going to talk about it in a little more detail. But you can see in this one, it says this essay examines the nature and development of an Anglophone tradition of conservative political thought. I've been looking up about that. And then it tells you what it considers. And then it tells you this essay asks whether this conservatism, blah, blah, blah. So usually in the first two paragraphs, you can tell what the article is about because the authors usually announce what they want to do with their articles. I hope you can see the hint I'm making here that when you present the paper you present at the end of the semester, it should be obvious what you want to say. What is your main argument? It should be obvious in the first two paragraphs. So scanning, you read the introductory paragraphs. You can also read the concluding ones. There was a very nice article I read last week. It will take me time to find it. Where the paragraph was just so nice. And it just said exactly what I was looking for. So I saved the article and kept it, and I ended up quoting it. So you read the introductory and the concluding paragraphs. And then in between, the paragraphs in between the first ones and the last, you can just read like the first sentence of the paragraph. Once you see that this is something you're interested in reading, then now you can say, okay, this is something I'll read, let me keep it aside. So that's one tactic of scanning, of reading the paragraphs, the introduction, the conclusion, and the first sentence of each paragraph. And then the second tactic is to look at the fundamental structure of the article. And every article you read basically follows the same format. It starts with an introduction, then it tells you what theoretical framework it is going to be using. So, and theoretical framework doesn't mean I'm going to use this and this theory. Sometimes theoretical framework could be, I'm going to use the perspective of Chomsky. in his book this and this. So that is the lens through which I'm going to talk about everything in this article. And then you look for the discussion of previous work. So if it discusses a person whose work you are following, then that's how you know whether this is an article you want to read. You also look at the presentation of the data. Is this data that you're interested in? Then you look at the argument, and then of course you look at the conclusion. Let me see whether, just give me a second to look for those. An article, the one I tell you I really liked and ended up quoting. This is something that I've started to get interested in, where academics get this arrogance of thinking that what we say is the gospel truth and it must be followed to the letter without any debate. So I was searching for articles on epistocracy, which is the rule by experts. I noticed that because the arguments are very philosophical, they don't tend to follow the format of theoretical framework, data collection, discussion of results, and then conclusion. So what this author did was that she started with an experience, which is the same one I have had, of people thinking that science is the Bible. And then she says, I am going to make two arguments. So one is that there's no superior political judgment. She's responding to a book called Against Democracy. And then what you do, like I said, you just look at the first paragraph. You just randomly pick a paragraph and say, I'm going to read the first two sentences. So you see here another premise Brennan argues for explicitly is the existence of objective competence in political matters. Basically, the idea is academics are politically objective. Nonsense. Anyway, then she puts her second argument there and gives some very interesting arguments. And then, like I was saying towards the end, I mean, this is a really difficult, conceptually, it's a very difficult argument to make. So it doesn't follow the format that you expect. But let me check one which has social data. Yes, I get excited by I am a person of ideas. I love good ideas. So when I see a good article, I just feel, I feel like I've eaten a good meal. Okay, this one is about the only student I've supervised. She did her thesis on the church and social media. So I had to educate myself on social media and religion. So this is the title of the article. You can see her study, their study is data heavy. So they start with an introduction of what are people saying in the field. In the area of social media and religion, what are people saying? And she even starts with Pew Research. Pew Research is one of the websites that does a lot of, collects a lot of data on religion, especially in the US. And then she first talks about the thesis, the theoretical framework uses and gratification, whether it's suitable. And then, of course, she picks all the people who have studied about it. And then now she talks about the methods and explains what she did, what they did to collect data, and explains the scale. And then here are the results. Now, the results are where now they talk about, you know, what data they collected and how they calculated. Remember, I was talking about tables and graphics. There they are. And then they discuss the results. They talk about the implications and then finish off with limitations and future research. So what I was saying is that you can basically, by the way, this is a skill of getting used to it. You need to keep doing it many times until it becomes like second nature to you. So like me, I can look at an article these days. I can look within a minute, I've decided whether this has what I want. But I'm talking about what, 14, 15 years of experience. So you have to be patient with yourself and start doing it now. This is the class where I'm not giving you big assignments so that you can actually do these things and start getting used to looking at the material, making the quick decisions, whether this is something you want to read, and then moving on to the next one.